Good evening to you all, and welcome to our second council meeting in January. It's a regular scheduled meeting. And so as we begin tonight, I thank you all for adhering to our mask policy and also social distancing here in the council chambers. As I call the meeting to order tonight, I'm going to recognize Mr. Singleton, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Invocation.
Call the meeting to order, call roll.
Yeah, I didn't see that on here and I missed it. Okay, yeah. So let's call the roll first, Madam Clerk, if we will.
Mayor Marshburn,
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vance,
Here.
Councilmember Dellinger,
Here.
Councilmember Matthews,
Here.
Councilmember Singleton,
Here.
and Councilmember Behringer.
Thank you so much, and obviously it was right there on the agenda. So now we'll recognize Mr. Singleton for the Pledge of Allegiance and the Invocation. Stand if you're able.
I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
You wish to join me in the invocation, please bow. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for our wonderful town, our wonderful community that we live in. Thank you for the opportunity to gather tonight and talk about important business for our town and our community. We ask that you be with those fathers who are sick, battling illnesses, battling COVID, battling terminal diseases. Be with them and their families this time of need and time of stress. Father, we lift up the men and the women who represent our country in the military, serving at military bases and installations around the world. Ask you be with these men and women and their families. Cover them with safety, protect them and their families. Father, be with us and guide us tonight as we make these decisions that are so important for our community from not only weeks and months, but for years to come. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Singleton. Okay. So this evening, for those of you who will be speaking, we have sort of a relaxed protocol as it relates to wearing masks. So when you come to the podium, you can feel free to let down your mask or take it off so we can hear you even better, and I'll try to do the same thing. All right, our first item on the agenda is petitions and comments. This is a time for the council to receive comments from the general public. Ideally, citizens should sign up in advance with the town clerk prior to the start of the meeting. The council is interested in hearing your concerns, but may not take action or deliberate on subject matters brought during the petitions and comments segment. Topics requiring further investigation be referred to the appropriate town officials or staff and may be scheduled for a future agenda. And I would suggest those of you who expect to speak, we do ask you to keep your comments to 3 and no more than 5 minutes to expedite our time this evening. I didn't see that anyone had signed up, but I do understand that there are some folks here who wish to address the council this evening. So if you would let it be known by raising your hand, and I'll recognize you and we'll get you up to the podium if you so desire. Are there any?
Sure.
Okay. All right. If you will, I guess you could go to the podium right back there and give us your name and address, and we'll hear your comments, sir.
My name is Rox Sugis. I live at 1218 Sutherland in Garner, North Carolina, and I'm here to voice my concern over the zoning change amendment that's proposed for the land that's by Angie's Restaurant. And I oppose that.
Could I interrupt you just
Yes,
briefly? If you're wanting to address an item of business that's on the agenda, we will have a time when we will recognize folks who are
Okay.
here for that purpose.
Sure.
If
I'll
you're here
sit
for
down.
some other reason, we'll be happy to hear from you.
Sure, I'll sit down for that.
That'd be a better time. Yes, thank you. Okay. We do have, I think council has before you, I don't know if Madam Attorney, we would consider this under petitions and comments, but I think we all were given a petition, signed, support for communities, beautiful urban forest. We'll accept that as information. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And so those persons who are presenting that, you're not looking to address the council, is that right? Later? I think now would be.
I think it's related to the item on the agenda.
Oh, is it? Okay, all right, all right. I didn't make that connection at the time. Okay, so we'll recognize you at that time then. Okay, so there are any other persons here to address the council under petitions and comments. Am I correct on that? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we'll move along then. Council, the next item is adoption of the agenda. You have it before you there on the computer. I'll entertain a motion that for adoption of the agenda at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made and properly seconded. Any questions, comments? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
If there's any opposition, no, and there is none, so the agenda is adopted. The next item of business is a presentation. I believe this is scheduled to be done virtually. Is that right, Mr. Hodges?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so at this time, we will recognize, I believe it's Mr. Tim Lyons from Malden and Jenkins. Sir, are you with us virtually there?
I am. Good evening. Can you all hear me?
We can, yes. So thank you for being here, and the floor is yours, sir.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate y'all having me here tonight. I will share my screen real quick, and I think y'all should see right now the audit presentation that we will present for y'all tonight. I know y'all have a busy agenda, and so we will try to go quickly here and just present the results of the June 30th, 2021 financial and compliance audit. So as we've done in the past, I know we have worked with the town for a couple of years now. I'm going to go over the results of the audit, a couple slides on some financial trends, comments, recommendations, and certainly if anybody has any questions as I move through the presentation, please feel free to let me know. I've also got a time at the end while I entertain any questions that may have come as I've gone through the presentation. Just by way of reintroducing myself to everybody, my name is Tim Lyons, and I served as the engagement lead partner on the town's audit. Cynthia Bigger, who is a senior associate in my office, was the in charge on the town's engagement. And Christopher McKellar, who is a partner in our Atlanta office, served as the quality control reviewer, where once we get done with the audit, myself and the other members of the engagement team submit everything over to another partner in our governmental practice who is not otherwise associated with the engagement, who does an independent review to make sure that we have done everything we need to do. And that, as I mentioned, that gentleman's name was Christopher McKellar in our Atlanta office. A slide here on the results of the audit. Just as a reminder, the financial statements are the responsibility of the town, and we were engaged to audit them and to express an opinion. And our objective is to provide reasonable, not absolute assurance that the basic financial statements of the town are free from material misstatement. Our report on the basic financial statements is called an unmodified opinion, which is just a fancy auditing term for a clean opinion. There's no higher opinion or better opinion that you can get. And so we had a clean opinion on the financial statements. In addition, in the back of the town's report, there's a compliance section, and in that section, we had to issue additional reports that are the reports on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance in accordance with government auditing standards. Once again, another clean report for this year. No internal control matters were noted or reported, and no instances of non-compliance were reported. In addition, there are two other reports that are kind of what are known as the single audit reports. This is where we have to conduct additional compliance audit procedures when the town spends more than $750,000 of federal money or $500,000 of state of North Carolina funds. For the current year, we had to audit 2 major programs. The town had 2 separate single audits that we had to do this year. The first at the federal level was the town's expenditure of its COVID-19 coronavirus relief funds that were passed through Wake County. That amounted to about $793,000 of expenditures for the fiscal year. And the second one was the North Carolina Department of Transportation's Powell bill funds that accounted for about $772,000 of expenditures during the year. And once again, a clean report both on the federal grants and federal expenditures, and a clean report on the state state expenditures, and no issues, no internal control issues were noted over compliance. The next couple of slides that I have here are what are known as the required communications. We've provided these to the town in writing, and so I'm not going to go through and read every single one of these, but I do think it's important just to point out a few of these. And that first bullet, the significant accounting policies, that third little hash mark there, the town did have to implement a new accounting standard this year, as did all local governments that report in accordance with the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. So if you do a kind of a side-by-side review of the financial statements and kind of flip page by page, you'll notice in the previous year's report, we had what was called an agency fund, which had assets and liabilities related to water and sewer fees. This year, with the way that GASB 84 redefined fiduciary activities, we collapsed the asset and the liability related to that fund into the town's general fund, because it just really did not meet the definition of a custodial fund, which is what the new standard calls it. So you'll notice that change in financial reporting. That change is discussed in further detail in Note 12 if you want to go and to read about that, Note 12 to the financial statements in the section of the report called Notes. I always think it's important to point out our relationship with management. We received full cooperation from the town's management and staff. And what this means, this doesn't mean that, we got, buddy with David and with the finance folks. What this means is that through the course of the audit, we requested, to speak with numerous different people. We requested numerous different types of documentation that we needed. We had questions and variances that we want to look at. And the town's management was forthcoming, provided everything that we needed, provided answers to all of our questions, gave us access to everything that we needed. So full cooperation from management, and do appreciate all the help and the hard work that goes into the audit from David and his team in the finance department. And then last but not least, I always think it's important to remind the governing body that we are independent. We meet all the requirements to be independent. We have to be, otherwise we could not issue an opinion on the town's financial statements. So we meet the requirements of not only the AICPA's professional standards, but also the more stricter requirements of government auditing standards. And to that point, there were no fees paid to M&J for any sort of management or advisory services during the fiscal year that might impact our independence as the town's auditors. A couple of quick slides here on the town's general fund. We have a chart here showing the town's general fund balance categories over the last 5 years. Overall, the town's general fund balance continues to grow. And what you'll notice here is that the committed fund balance, which is where the board, where the town council has set aside money to spend for specific purposes, has grown a little bit. In addition, that restricted, that red bar there, that's predominantly made up of the requirement of the state of North Carolina, makes you go through and calculate this restriction for state stabilization, where basically they don't allow you to appropriate for spending any of the non-cash fund balance that you have. I always think it's good to look at that trend line and see that that's staying relatively stable. We're not seeing huge swings in that restricted number, because what that could mean is that we're spending down a lot of cash, and what we have left in fund balance is really not cash or investment. So that could create some issues, but we're not seeing that trend. The town's general fund, as it shows here on this slide, at June 30th of 2021, about 34% of the town's annual expenditures are in unassigned fund balance. GFOA's recommendation would be 25 or so percent. The city of North Carolina would require you to have at least 20% in there. If not, I would have to report to you a financial indicator of concern, which there are none. The town's general fund balance continues to be at a healthy level, and the trend lines continue to be positive across the last 5 years. So all positive things for the town's general fund. The last couple of slides I have here really are just by way of information, want to communicate and make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing with our clients. Over the next 2 reporting periods, we will have some new accounting standards. The GASB has issued several standards that will impact the town's financial statements in the next couple of years. We'll be working with David and the finance team to make sure we get those implemented correctly in the future periods. And then on there, just by way of information, some of the current things that are being discussed and deliberated by the GASB that could have an impact on future financial statements and financial reports for the town. Also, just to point out, the feds continue to take a lot of significant actions related to COVID-19 and all of the different funding streams. It's funny, even putting this presentation together last week for David, this bullet point about the American Rescue Plan funds became obsolete because the Treasury Department actually issued the final rule on how to spend those funds. We know the UNC School of Government and the Local Government Commission does a very good job of pumping out a lot of information on that. But as the town continues to evaluate how to spend all of that money, we just want to make sure that we're all paying attention to all the different things that the feds are doing to make sure we're complying and doing everything we need to, because there is a high level of scrutiny and visibility on how these funds will be spent. And last but not least tonight, just by way of reminder, we do offer free quarterly continuing education for all of our governmental clients, and just want to make sure that if anybody wants to make sure they're on our mailing list and is getting these emails, please reach out to David. He has my contact information and can get your name and your email added to our mailing list. We'd be happy to add you to our distribution list. With that, I will happily take any questions from the town. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen and turn that back over to y'all. And if there's any questions that I can answer for anybody, I would be happy to do so.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lyons, for that concise report. You covered a lot of ground in short order there. We appreciate your presentation and your work with our town. We believe we have one of the best finance offices around, and so we appreciate their good work. At this point, council members, I'll give each of you an opportunity if you desire to ask Mr. Lyons any questions or make any comments. And I'll start with Mr. Vance to my right down here.
I have no questions at this time.
Okay. I'll go back to Mr. Matthews. Switch
Great
back.
report. No questions. Mr.
Okay. Mr. Dellinger. Okay. Mr. Singleton.
Good.
And Ms. Behringer. Okay. So I have no questions, Mr. Lyons. I've have skinned the document. I do intend to go back and look at it more fully, but thank you for the good work that you've done. And unless you have further comments or observations, we'll probably release you to get on with the rest of your evening.
Thank you. And certainly if anybody has any questions as you've had a chance to look things over and as you're kind of diving into the report, David has my contact information. Please let me know if you have any questions or anything further that I can help explain.
Okay, just before you go, I'll ask the town manager or assistant manager if there are any questions or comments you have.
No, we don't have any.
Okay.
I don't have any.
Okay.
And Mr. Beck is on. If he has any comments he'd like to make, you might recognize him.
Yeah, Mr. Beck, before we wrap this up, we'll be happy to hear from you if you have any further comments. You said you had none?
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, I would just like to thank Tim and his team for their hard work, their assistance through this process. I'd also like to thank my staff, especially Miss Jenny Shacker for her efforts to compile the report and a lot of the background work that we don't see in the finished product. But have a great team behind me, and it's really a team effort to get a clean report like this. So I appreciate everyone chipping in and helping out with that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Beck, sure enough. So, Mr. Lyons, again, thank you for your time, and we'll, hopefully we won't need your immediate services, but we'll look again to next year, I guess. Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all.
Okay, we will now move to the next order of business, which is the consent agenda. Before I ask council to vote on that, I will note to you that you should have received a correspondence from our town manager. I had a question on one item on the consent agenda that he gave some further explanation on. It was item number 2, and I'm satisfied with the information he shared there. I suppose all of you have that. But with that notation, I will ask at this time if you're prepared to approve the consent agenda, noting the additional information there.
So moved.
Okay, moved and properly seconded. Any further question or comment? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, would you please vote aye?
Aye.
And there is no opposition or say no. Okay, consent agenda is approved as well. Thank you very much. Okay, we will now move to, let me see, I don't want to get ahead of myself here. I believe we are at the public hearing, and we have several of those this evening. Some of those are having to do with voluntary annexation petitions, and I believe the first 2 items are under that category. And Mr. Bamford, you will lead us through those, if you will, at this time, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. We got 2 voluntary annexation petitions before you tonight. I'd like to make you aware of a typo on the first one on your agenda. Annexation Case 21-16 was submitted by Dustin Sayes, D-U-S-T-E-N-S-A-Y-E-S. Raleigh Home Group is for the next case. So the first case is Annexation Petition 21-15, and this is a vacant tract where the owner wants to build a single-family home, and they have asked to connect to public water and sewer. This is off of Old Stage Road, right next to the entrance at Eagle Ridge Subdivision off of Waterfield Street. Address is 7820 Old Stage Road. Acreage is 3.9 acres. It is a contiguous annexation. The owner has submitted a building permit to build a single-family house, and annexation is required in order to receive town services. So I'll be happy to answer any questions on this case.
Thank you, Mr. Bamford. Council, I ask in general questions on this petition for annexation for Mr. Bamford. Okay, hearing none. I don't believe we have any other persons who wish to speak on this issue. Is that right? None that you're aware of, Mr. Bamford. So I believe before we move to the next item, a motion is in order to consider adopting the ordinance for this.
I move we adopt ordinance 2022-5096.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Singleton, and seconded by Mr. Matthews and others. So, council, if you are in favor of the motion, would you please vote aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposition, no. And there is none. Okay, Mr. Bamford, we'll hear from you on the next item.
This is Annexation Case 21-16. And like the previous case, this was a vacant tract of land, and the property was sold, and the owner would like to build a single-family house and tie into public water and sewer. The address is 719 Wakeland Drive, and the property is approximately 0.31 acres in area, and we are also including 0.12 acres within the public right-of-way directly in front of the property. This is also a contiguous annexation. Zoning is R15. The property owner has filed for a building permit, and that number is in your staff report. And like the previous case, connection to public water and sewer requires a voluntary annexation petition. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bamford. Council, you've heard the presentation. Are there any questions for Mr. Bamford on this issue? Down here, none? Down here, none. Okay. All right, a motion is in order at this time for this.
Mr. Mayor, if you could just confirm that there's no public comment and close the public hearing?
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Are there any from the public who wish to speak on this issue? Okay, hearing none, all right. We'll officially close the public hearing. Thank you, Madam Attorney. Now, a motion is in order.
Mayor, I move we adopt ordinance 2022-5097.
Second.
Okay, motion made and properly seconded. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, would you vote aye?
Aye.
If there's any opposition, no. And it is so ordered. Thank you, sir. I believe you are also taking the lead on the next item. Is that right, Mr. Bamford? And I guess I should officially open the public hearing on this matter, which I will do at this time, and recognize you, Mr. Bamford.
This is a conditional rezoning with a master plan. The case number is CZMP 21-09. And this is what we call a Tier 2 conditional rezoning. We have several more that are tracking behind this case, and you have not seen a case like this before. Before the 160D change last year, we received conditional rezonings with a full site plan. After 160D, that requirement went away. Cases that were filed before the change, we still carried those over. Examples would be like Rainer Meadows, the apartment site on Jurgen Road. That was a carryover with a full site plan. This Tier 2 master plan option is for an applicant to file written conditions and also attach a conceptual sketch plan. So a Tier 1 conditional zoning is written conditions only. So you've seen several of those where they just submit written conditions. This is a Tier 2 with written conditions plus a sketch plan. This request is to rezone approximately 9.36 acres from residential 20 and also multifamily 1 to a multifamily 1 conditional district 248 for the development up to 75 units as either single-family cluster, duplexes, townhomes, or condominiums. 75 units on this acreage would be at a density of approximately 8 units per acre. Written conditions are also proposed. The site is located between multiple addresses between 1316 to 1330 West Garner Road. This is a vicinity map of the rezoning and project boundary. Ventura West subdivision is located to the east, and this was rezoned and developed in 2016. To the north, we have Weston Ridge subdivision, which was rezoned in 1987, and that was developed in the early 90s. To the north, we have Angie's Restaurant. Directly to the east, we do have a non-conforming auto sales business. This is a non-conforming use on property zone R20. West Garner Road runs along the front of the site, so the site has direct frontage to West Garner Road. There are 2 street stubs into the site, Villa Vista Trace and also Curtis Drive. There are 2 commercial activity centers in this area. One is located at Jurgen and West Garner Road. There are some commercial retail uses in this vicinity. We have Angie's Restaurant, and across the street we do have some commercial business. The other activity center is at the intersection of Vandora Springs Road and West Garner Road, and also Vandora Springs Road and Highway 70. We do have commercial uses in that area. These are Google Street Views from this past summer, 2020. The picture on the left is looking east back towards NC 50. The properties are over here to the left. There are some older homes in this area, and those are located on the property to be rezoned. The picture to the right is looking west towards Angie's. It's the same homes, but it's just from a different angle. This map shows the zoning currently in this area, and I'll briefly go through that. The site zone single-family R20. Vandora West is zoned R9 conditional use. Weston Ridge is zoned multi-residential 1. To the north, we have commercial zoning, community retail. This includes the Angie's property, but also some surrounding properties as well. The blue area is zoned office and institutional. To the southeast, we do have R20 zoning. Across the street, we have R20 and also heavy commercial service business. There's a business located here. And then over towards the intersection of Jurgen Road and West Garner, we have community retail and also heavy commercial on the west side of West Garner Road, directly next to the railroad. I just wanted to show this map. There is a small sliver of the site zoned multifamily 1, and I did some research, and this multifamily 1 zoning was the predominant zoning where Weston Ridge is currently. When it was rezoned in 1987, this was a little sliver that did not get, or was not part of that zoning change, so it was carried over. So the majority of the site is R20, with the exception of a small piece zoned multifamily 1. This is a list of zoning cases in this area of Garner. Weston Ridge was rezoned in 1987. Vandora West, which was previously named Kelly's Crossroads, was rezoned in 2016. We had a rezoning in 2019, a little farther north on West Garner Road, across from TT&E for commercial development. And our most recent case was from last year on Weston Road, where a site was rezoned for a residential single-family subdivision. So 8.91 acres are zoned R20. This is a single-family district. Permissible uses include single-family detached. Agricultural uses are also permissible. Schools, churches, community centers, and other uses are permissible in R20. A small portion is zoned multifamily 1, and that allows a density up to around 9 units an acre. Permissible uses in MF1 include single-family cluster, which are single-family homes on small lots of around 5,000 square feet. Apartments, townhomes, condominiums, duplexes, quadplexes are also permissible uses in the multifamily 1 district. The request is to rezone the entire site to multifamily 1 conditional district 248. And the applicant has proposed written conditions and will also go through the proposed master plan. So out of the list of permissible uses in multifamily 1, which is around 20, the applicant is proposing to restrict uses to only the following: residential cluster, 2-family dwellings, townhomes, and condominiums. In addition to use restrictions, the applicant is also proposing some site and architectural conditions that would apply to the development on the site. First, each dwelling on the property shall contain a minimum of 1,500 square feet of heated gross floor area. Buildings shall have a maximum 40-foot height and 3 stories. No vinyl siding will be used on any of the unit exteriors. No more than 75 residential units will be constructed on the property. Each townhome or condominium group defined as a building containing multiple units shall include at least 2 of the following siding types on the front facade: board and batten, horizontal lap siding, or shake siding. Front facade of each townhouse or condominium unit will include the following treatments: A covered entry. B, at least 3 operable windows and 1 entry door. C, at least 1 2-foot horizontal offset per every 2 units. Number 8, all townhome and condominium units will have a minimum 8-inch roof overhang on the front and rear. In units of each townhome or condominium group will have a minimum 8-inch roof overhang. 9, units with garage parking will provide a minimum garage size of 12 feet by 20 feet. 10, no principal buildings shall be located within 100 feet of the rear lot lines of the following properties, and these are the PIN numbers here. We'll show that on the master plan. 11, a proposed amenity of 500 square feet, including a shelter, stationary tables, and seating will be provided. The character, we went over the character previously with the current zoning and the land uses in the area. The neighborhood meeting, we identified 76 properties within our 300-foot notification buffer, and that was given to the applicant to use for the neighborhood meeting, which was held on August the 5th at the Garner Senior Center with 15 in attendance. And when we went through and checked the list, it looked like half of those that attended were outside of the notice, and they were not on the actual notification list. This map shows the neighborhood meeting information, the sites shaded in red. The 300-foot notification buffer is the outer red line here, and that's for the neighborhood meeting notice and also the public hearing notice. According to our records, the properties shaded in yellow were the property owners that attended the neighborhood meeting. However, there were also other owners that were outside of this notification area that did attend the neighborhood meeting. And some of those, I think, were on Purdue Street. So those were some property owners a little farther west of the site. East of the site. Moving on to the proposed master plan. The area is 9.36 acres. Under MF1, theoretically, you could have 90 units on the site. There is a 75-unit cap per the zoning conditions. Minimum width for a townhome is 18 feet wide. Setbacks 25 feet on the front, side 15, 30 feet between buildings, or the triangulation method can be used. Rear setback is 25 feet, corner side is 25 feet. So this is the master plan here. So West Garner Road is located along the left or western boundary of this map. The street connections to Villa Vista and also Curtis Drive are here. These are currently stubs that were done at the time of development of those subdivisions. The perimeter buffers are located here, and the PIN numbers that were listed in the zoning conditions are the PIN numbers for these lots here. So I believe there's a 100-foot buffer between a structure and a lot line along these lots here in Weston Ridge. Stormwater proposed locations are shaded in blue here and here. The proposed amenity area is located here in the center part of the site. The mail kiosk would be located here. There would be there are perimeter buffers required along adjacent to all property lines. Next to single family, the minimum is 35 feet. Next to the auto sales lot, which is located directly to the south, that buffer I believe is 15 feet. And per zoning conditions, the applicant is offering up additional buffering in this area here next to these single family lots. Going to traffic and access, the project will have 2 points of access on West Garner Road, in addition to interior street connectivity to both Villa Vista Trace and Curtis Drive in the adjoining neighborhoods of Weston Ridge and Vandora West, which were both constructed as stubs for future connection. Since Curtis Drive functions as a minor collector and is being extended per the recommendations of adopted town transportation plans, townhome lots fronting Curtis Drive will be accessed from alleyways. Remaining units in the site will be accessed via a private drive. This would be, I believe, a private road here. This would be the public road here, the extension of Curtis over to West Garner. These units would front on the public street, but the access driveways would be in the rear by an alleyway. Pedestrian access will be accommodated with sidewalks along both sides of all streets and private drives. Sidewalk will also extend along the site's frontage of West Garner Road. Buffering requirements. For tree cover, this is a sliding scale from 12 to 14%, and this was the rule at the time that this project was submitted. Perimeter buffers, 35 feet along the northern, eastern, and a portion of the southern boundary adjacent to single family. Again, per zoning conditions, the applicant is offering additional buffering next to the lots next to Weston Ridge Run. 15-foot buffer calculated along the southern portion where the auto sales is being conducted. Street buffers, Garner Road, minimum 20-foot wide buffer with street trees enhanced with preserved and/or new vegetation. Street trees must be provided approximately every 40 feet along the roadway. So this is along West Garner Road. Every 40 feet, there'll be a street tree required to be installed. Open space. 10% of the site is required to be open space, and this comes out to 0.93 acres. This is 10% of the 9-acre site. Open space areas will be owned and maintained by a homeowners association. Required open space will be met with a combination of qualifying conservation areas and recreation space. Recreation space will include a structured gathering area and passive amenities. There are no FEMA designated floodplains on the site, and we are not aware of any Neuse River riparian buffers on the site. Even though this has a blue line here, we're not aware of any buffers on the site. When the applicant, if this gets approved, the applicant has to submit a full site plan for review. So at that time, The status of that buffer would probably be determined if there's one there, and will be shown on the site plan. The master plan shows a enhanced buffer in that area as proposed now. Water and sewer will be provided by City of Raleigh Public Utilities. There's water and sewer along West Garner Road, and there's also water and sewer on Villa Vista Trace and Curtis Drive. So the developer will extend utilities into the site for that development to connect to. Lighting for streets and common areas, those will just have to meet the UDO regulations. Stormwater management will meet UDO regulations. Water lines and hydrant spacing, they're required to meet the Garner Fire and Raleigh water rules and regulations. All landscaping and parking will also be re-verified. Again, this will be done when a full site plan comes back to us for review. Plan consistency. If the council moves this forward to the Planning Commission for their review, the Planning Commission is required by state statute to make a written recommendation regarding the consistency of the zoning proposal with the town's current comprehensive plan or other applicable adopted plans. If it moves forward after Planning Commission, it'll come back to council for action. At that time, the council is required to approve a statement of reasonableness when making their decision. In closing, staff recommends that once the council has heard comments, concerns, and questions from the public, that conditional zoning request CZMP 21-09 be referred to the Planning Commission for their review and recommendation regarding plan consistency. So that concludes staff's presentation. Planning Director Jeff Triesenberg is on Teams to help me answer any of your questions, and I'll stop there for now.
Thank you, Mr. Bamford. Well done. So, council, any questions for Mr. Bamford? I'll start with Ms. Behringer. Okay. Mr. Dellinger?
Start with my first two questions, and then I'll pass to someone else and get the rest of mine. First one is, are there examples of residential cluster development in Garner?
Sure. There is one that was approved not too long ago. It's Buffalo Grove, I believe, off of Buffalo Road near the roundabout at Vandor Springs Road and Buffalo Road. That was a cluster development. It was rezoned, I believe, to multifamily 1 to allow single family on smaller lots. And that is in exchange for more open space, and you have to do a perimeter buffer. So there's some extra things you have to do to get those small lots.
When that rezoning came in, was it conditional and had several different options on it as well for townhomes and other things, or was it strictly?
I believe it was I'm going off of memory. I believe it was strictly for single family.
Okay. I didn't know if we had any, so I couldn't envision what it would look like, and it didn't seem to jibe with the sketch. The other question is it necessary to connect both Curtis and Villa Vista? Is that required? Because to me, it looks very, if both of those were connected, it's very busy back there, and we're sort of creating an intersection inside of a neighborhood with left turns and right turns, whereas if Curtis were the only one, you'd have some continuity. I don't know, is that necessary?
Jeff, do you want to try to answer that? I mean, we typically require that when there's infill development next to sites that are currently developed with a street stub, just for interconnectivity. Engineering has looked at this, and this is a intersection, so we're not aware or don't foresee any safety or hazards with this particular layout?
I would just add for the council's benefit, Villa Vista is a 400-foot dead end, which exceeds the current UDO lengths by double. It is not finished with a proper turnaround for emergency purposes. So this would help to correct that. We've also looked at just the larger picture, and I think you're right in that Curtis Drive continues to be the main movement, because once you were to turn left, eventually you just come back to Curtis. So there's really not another movement, a strong movement to be made other than for local residents.
Mr. Dellinger, I'll come back to you if you have other questions. Mr. Vance, anything?
Questions?
Ms. Behringer? Okay, I'll go to Mr. Singleton.
We'll follow up on Mr. Dellinger with the Curtis Drive connection. I reckon I was concerned when we put Curtis Drive in the Vandor Hills Place, but with the curve coming around Curtis Drive and the direct turn on Vandor Hills Place, was concerned with cut-through traffic. And now I see with this, I see cut-through traffic even worse because you can avoid the stoplight. If you want to come down that way and turn right, it looks like we're setting ourselves up for, yes, it's a connection to a stub out, but it looks like we're setting ourselves up for a cut-through street to avoid a stoplight and turn right. That's a concern. I have a concern that we're connecting I know we're connecting two stub outs, but we're connecting two stub outs from single family housing, one that's been there to Weston Ridge for over 20 years. Vandor West is relatively new, and we're sticking townhomes between them. It's zoned R20 now. Single family's been there for years, and we're changing the character of the neighborhood. There's no other townhomes nearby this project, and you're dramatically changing the character of the neighborhood with this rezoning. And again, you're building it between two established single family neighborhoods. Big concern. I'll stop there.
Matthews.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have the same concerns. Our question is, even though the stub out, is it required to be open? Because these folks have been living in that area a long time, and now all of a sudden we're going to open it up. And I've got big issues on the stub out. So is it required that stub out have to be open, or can it be just closed? Is my question. And second, I'll come back to the other, but that stub out's the hot button right now.
It's my understanding it is required. I mean, it's required per the transportation plan.
And that's it?
So for Curtis, it is. I think the Villa Vista, you have to look at, though, that it is stubbed and that it currently was not done in a way that meets ordinance requirements. So that is a hurdle that would have to get around. The other thing is that water connections do need to be in public right-of-ways, and I know that Raleigh Water has identified a water connection through there, which would not necessarily necessitate that the road be open for movement, but the right-of-ways would definitely need to be connected to allow that to happen.
Come back to you if you need to.
I guess so. And finally, I guess so we've got opportunities here to possibly deal with the stub out situation. It's still on the table, I guess, is what I just want to make sure that was cleared.
I'll go back around over here. Mr. Dellinger.
Yeah, but, we do need to revisit transportation plan. It's overdue, and I think that's something we could look at, is having some discretion in those situations. My other question is related to the entrances. It says that the north entrance is right in, right out only. Is that correct?
I don't know the answer off the top of my
I thought
head.
I'd read that somewhere. Can someone speak to that.
How about the northern entrance?
Yeah. What are the, let me back up in this. Can you explain again the entrance improvements required for both of these entrances off of Garner Road? The turn lanes, are there, what, are they just putting driveways and that's it? Or are there any other improvements related to, or modifications to these entrances?
I would defer to the applicant in their discussions with NCDOT thus far, but we would be asking them to finish off the 74-foot cross-section. And I believe that there were some early indications of turn lanes, but DOT would ultimately be making those decisions as part of their driveway encroachment permit, since there is no TIA for this project. But I believe the applicant may have some more information.
The applicant is here, right? Okay, we'll hear from him or her in just a minute. Anything else for Mr. Bamford? Down here. Here.
That's a question. It was mentioned about a car lot down there where you're talking about. Is that tell me about that. I'm just out of curiosity since you brought it up.
Sure. I don't know how long it has been there, but it's non-conforming. It's zone R20. It's grandfathered in. So as long as the use continues, it's allowed to operate, and it's been there as long as I've been here. So I don't know exactly when it started, but it's been around a long time.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Mr. Mayor, I found the citation. It's in the report from the neighborhood meeting. It's bullet pointed on page 69. And it says, reviewed NCDOT required improvements, turn lane at south entrance, right in, right out at north entrance. So I was just curious as to what the list of improvements on both of those are. I think I have a little concern that southern entrance is kind of a blind curve a little bit when you're coming around on Garner Road. And so I didn't know if there was going to be a lane, a turn lane in the middle, or a turn lane, to turn right. So I'm kind of curious if when the applicant speaks, they can speak to any road improvements that will need to be made along Garner Road specifically.
Okay. Council, you ready to hear from our next person to testify at this point in time? Mr. Bamford will still be here if we need to bring him back. Okay. Mr. Bamford, do you know who's the next person, representing the applicant that wants to speak?
Sure. It's Mr. Toby Coleman.
Okay. Mr. Coleman, if you would, state your name and address, please.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Toby Coleman with Smith Anderson, 150 Fayetteville Street, here on behalf of the applicant, Concept 8. Here with me I'm going to be providing the main presentation, but obviously I think there's some questions that you guys may have that may go beyond my knowledge as an attorney. So with me today is Jason Meadows with Concept 8, Wes Mize with VHB, the project designer, and Maggie Sparling with Chappelle Residential. For background, and I know Councilman Dellinger sort of has cited the neighborhood meeting notes, and there's some information there, but Concept 8, you may have seen their signs around town, but they are a local builder based here in the Triangle. I think offices mainly in Apex, but they do a lot of work in Raleigh and in Garner and around the Triangle. They, in addition to building new communities like this one, they do custom home construction and renovations. And if you go to the next slide. So David did a really good job, as the mayor said, in outlining this proposal. I can kick off by answering a couple of questions just off the top. And I'll do that. So the key zoning conditions, which David summarized, no apartments. We've got a long list of design conditions, but a max of 75 units or 8 units per acre. We were very mindful of the existing residential neighborhoods to the east, and so there is significant buffering provided both under the master plan and the zoning conditions. Also note that there is, as Mr. Bamford said, there's an existing, going back to in the 80s, there was the Western Ridge. What became Western Ridge was zoned MF1 before being rezoned to MR1. You've also got commercial zoning to the north. So this proposal is purely for townhomes, and it's to zone from R20 to an MF1 zoning. If you go to the next slide, David. Councilor Dellinger, you had asked about the entrances. The north entrance there is going to be right in, right out. And then there are discussions. West Garner Road is a DOT maintained secondary road. And so, as I believe Jeff Triesenberg said, they will ultimately make the determinations. We have been talking with them extensively in terms of improvements for the south entrance, which is probably the main sort of full access entrance, or the full access entrance. It will have a left-hand turn lane that will be built for the southbound folks. So people who are driving southbound will have a left-hand turn lane to turn in. And that will be in addition to some other improvements, which I'll discuss along the roadway, some widening and other things. So the master plan, I think, shows the significant buffers that are being provided here. About 23% of the property is calculated on the master plan to be open space. As you can see, that provides a lot of buffering for the neighboring single-family homeowners, and provides basically and creates an area for basically what effectively is a transitional area, right? You've got a transitional area along West Garner that is going to more commercial, that is going to denser and more intense uses, as well as a railroad there. What it provides is, as David outlines, is a 35-foot perimeter buffer. Those are fully protected buffers under the city's UDO, where you can't take down trees, do anything like that along the residential properties. In addition, there's additional requirements that zoning conditions that none of the homes will be within 100 feet of the rear of the 5 properties on Villa Vista Trace, which is the northern part, the street that goes north-south off of the site. You'll have similar distances from the properties that back up to this one on Vandora Springs Road. If you go to the next slide. So I wanted to provide some concept of what the design standards would sort of look like. So on the right there, you have a recent townhome development that Concept 8 built in North Raleigh off of Glenwood Avenue, which provides some good illustration of some of the requirements. So these are built for sale townhomes. In other words, these are not being built to be rental units. Concept 8 is building these for sale. Minimum of 1,500 square feet under the zoning conditions. These are design standards that are all set out in the zoning conditions. Max 40-foot height, or 3 stories. There's some siding requirements there that I think are best sort of seen to be understood. Again, no vinyl siding, but in addition, basically the requirement is you use 2 of the designated types of siding. On this one, I believe it is board and batten on the first floor and horizontal lap siding on the upper floor. And you can see some of the other design elements that are required along the front, the roof overhang, the covered entry, offsets to provide some variety along the frontage. So there is an eye towards design requirements and making sure that these are quality products. As you all know, as you all are seeing this more and more, I know, part of what's going on here is that, if you go to Concept 8's website, they are a design build company. They do a lot of custom home developments, very high-end things. This is frankly part and parcel of the increasing property values in our area. We've got to find ways to, what Concept 8 is responding to is people want to live in places like Garner, and people, as land prices increase, it becomes harder to afford it, even if you are ready to pay for a premium product. And so these townhomes are a premium product, a premium neighborhood for a premium location. If you go to the next slide, David. As noted, there's 2 different types of townhomes that are proposed in this development. One is the alley-loaded garage unit with garages. Those are the sort of more pink units there that are outlined on your screen. The other units are what are known as condo townhome units. That's a concept that's sort of imported from the UDO. Long story short, the difference is that the condo units are on private drives. And so you have to, the town requires that those be condoized instead of have individual ownership of each one. We did hear from staff that there was a desire to make sure that any garages installed in these units were not too small. And so there is a zoning requirement that requires that the garages on the garage units be a minimum of 12 feet wide and 20 feet deep. If you go to the next slide. And then, as David mentioned, there is the amenity area south of the stormwater pond. It would have, the zoning conditions require that it be 500 square feet, that it include a shelter, table, and seating. If you go to the next slide, David. And then I did want to highlight the road and sidewalk improvements. I do want to say off the bat, because I think one of the biggest issues that we've heard from council today is the same issue that we heard from neighbors at the neighborhood meeting, which was a lot of neighbors saying, I am concerned about about the fact that this connects to my existing street. I like the fact that I have a dead end. I'm sure that you all know this, but let me say it to be clear. We are responding to direction from city staff that town staff, that this is town policy to connect these stub outs, that these are existing stub outs that need to be connected. And so that is why our plans propose that. If it is the council's will and if staff says that it is consistent with policy and everybody's comfortable with it, we are happy to look at other options to address those concerns. There are, I will note, I took the liberty of looking at some of this stuff. There is in the transportation plan, I think the Curtis Drive extension is listed as one of the desired sort of extensions within the plan. But as was noted, a plan is a plan that is only in place until council changes it. So, we had designed this to meet what we were being told was the requirements. We did hear from neighbors that was a concern about cut-through traffic and other things. Again, Concept 8 doesn't really have an opinion on the interconnection because, frankly, it's not going to serve these folks. We don't expect that most of the folks that live in this neighborhood would drive through either of the neighborhoods. We anticipate that they would primarily get onto West Garner Road. Now, I may be wrong. We may be misconstruing the attractiveness of the Van Dora cut through, but that is our anticipation. And with that, we are available for questions. We thank you for your time and are eager to hear both from council and our neighbors on concerns and how we can move forward in getting this project done.
Okay, before you leave, let me see if there are questions from council. I'll start down to my left with Mr. Matthews. Anything for the attorney?
Nothing more than a stub outside. It's good to know that you guys are amenable to, if we can work through some issues here, that'd be good. That's all I got, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Singleton, anything?
Yes, Mr. Coleman, you showed us an example of a recently built townhome project in North Raleigh. On the diagram you're showing here, I'm assuming that's the townhouse and not the condo townhouse, or is it? I don't know. That's what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
excuse me, I should have said that. That is the quote-unquote condo townhouse, meaning it doesn't have a garage.
This is the condo townhouse?
Yeah.
Okay.
That development this is in North Raleigh. Raleigh has similar requirements that basically say if you have all of this development was on private streets. And so the requirement is if you're on private streets as opposed to public streets, you have to have them be condos. They're basically the same thing. They're still townhouses, right? They're still a single unit. You wouldn't know anything. The only difference is the type of ownership. And that's the way that's the distinction here.
Okay. So the follow-up then, so the example you're showing is going to be similar to both the condo townhomes and the townhomes that are projected for this project?
I'm going to ask Jason Meadows to come up. He's with Concept 8. He's
Okay.
an engineer who has done a lot of design work.
Name and address, please, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Jason Meadows, 8771 Cleveland Road, Clayton, NC.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Singleton. So this is a buy right example of a Concept 8 product that I think is just indicative of the type of product that we build. This was not a product that was arrived at through zoning conditions that required the architectural features that you're looking at here. So I think it's just important to point out the quality of construction and the quality of the product. And that's what I think Toby's trying to demonstrate here is that's just a buy right product that was done in Raleigh, not something that was forced by zoning conditions. So
It's just a similar project, it's not an identical project.
exactly, yeah. We're
Okay.
not saying that these are going to look exactly like this, but this is just to demonstrate what this could look like, to demonstrate the type of architectural components that go into a typical unit that we would build.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Behringer, anything? Okay, we'll go to Mr. Dellinger.
Yeah. I'm going to be the dumbest person in the room and ask you to explain to me again the difference between a townhome and a condo townhome.
So that is not a dumb question. It is, I think, the most reasonable question of the night, and something that two council members have asked. So the only person that would be dumb to say it's dumb would be me. The basic difference, frankly, is that one has a garage and one doesn't. So from a practical standpoint, that's the difference. The red ones, which are the quote unquote condo townhomes, don't have garages. They're on private streets with parking out front. The townhomes with garages are the ones where it is on a public street. It fronts a public street, and so it is alley loaded with a garage out back. So that is the practical distinction. If you are walking through the neighborhood, that's how you would distinguish the two. Now, I can go through the niceties of condo ownership versus unit ownership, but I don't think that was the question.
No, we're getting there. And I guess now I want to ask the question, what's the architectural or developer decision to not have garages on those condo townhomes and have all street parking?
Yeah, so I think one of the main distinctions that we will probably see is a market-driven distinction between a product variability. So what we'll see is more likely the condo units will be at a different scale and maybe value than the townhome product with the garage. So what we see is an opportunity to provide a diverse product here in this market. So I believe that's what's driving that more than anything. But like Toby mentioned, the condos fronting on private streets is driven by Garner's current code that requires that. Otherwise, if that private street could have been, for example, a public street, we may have a slightly different take on what those the condo versus townhome deal in that fashion. So, does that?
Yeah, and so it goes to another question. How many bedrooms would the condo townhomes have? Because that would be the driver of how many parking spots would have to be required on the street. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think in general we haven't set that exactly, but that's generally a 2 to 3 bedroom unit in both of these scenarios, townhome and condos.
I think I got it now.
Mr. Vance, anything?
Other questions at this time?
Okay, I believe I've covered all council members for this particular individual. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else for the applicant at this time? I assume these, okay. Okay, at this time, there are other persons who appear here this evening who wish to speak to this particular proposal. I'll recognize some of you at this time and ask you to be as brief as possible. Okay, was it, yeah, Mr. Rivers? Could you state your name and address, please, ma'am?
My name is Ann Rivers. I live at 120 Villa Vista Trace in Garner, North Carolina. Good evening, Mayor Marshburn and council members. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I have a short speech for you. I've provided a package for you. In your package, you will find a petition, this speech, as well as a photo. And we are Ann Rivers and my husband David Schmidt, and we live in Garner in the Western Ridge community. We are speaking to ask for your support to protect one of our neighborhood's most valuable assets, a green space and beautiful urban forest. Please see the photo enclosed in your package for example of the trees in this area. There are plans for development in our community that would remove very old and beautiful hardwoods. We attended a developers meeting on August 5th. We are concerned because this urban forest means so much to our community. The developer Concept 8 plans to remove a significant portion of the forest now standing. According to Garner's UDO Article 7, the town requires only a 35-foot buffer between the existing and proposed zone uses. We are not opposed to building multifamily units near our homes, as we understand this is a way for our town to reduce sprawl and conserve green spaces, while providing sufficient housing for a rapidly growing community. We are opposed to removing this old growth, beautiful and very valuable urban forest. In your package, I've included our petition titled Support for Our Community's Beautiful Urban Forest, with a total of 100 signatures. 63 are from the Garner and surrounding communities. According to North Carolina's Forest Action Plan of 2020, this specific urban forest plan for removal is of high priority in their map survey to protect urban forests. During the community meeting with Concept 8, we communicated the case for preserving the existing tree canopy. As you know, housing is in very high demand in Garner. Real estate is thriving. Too much development is taking place in our community without sufficient planning from builders or the town of Garner to preserve the existing tree canopy and green spaces. Trees are being removed much too rapidly without consideration for the high value they provide. What does this forest provide for our community? Stormwater management. According to the USGS topographic map of our area, a downward slope between the building site and our neighborhood. There's a downward slope between the building site and our neighborhood. This could be problematic during storm and flood events. Trees help manage this. Stormwater runoff is the #1 cause of freshwater impairment in urban areas. Where rain falls on impervious surfaces, large volumes of water cannot be controlled, and it is swiftly carried to our freshwater systems. Stormwater runoff picks up many different pollutants: oils, greases, pesticides, fertilizers, metals, and other organic pollutants. Preserving undisturbed forests during development is a much more cost-effective approach than destroying these features and having to construct new stormwater management infrastructure. For example, the wet ponds a builder plans to install. Forests are used to manage stormwater runoff instead of using pipes, pumps, storage, or other installed infrastructure. The town of Garner should recognize the many stormwater benefits of green infrastructure and urban forests and should encourage the use of stormwater management practices by conserving and protecting urban forests. Human health. Urban areas have higher rates of respiratory diseases, including asthma and stress-related disorders. Urban forests reduce the risk of these negative health outcomes. Views of green landscapes reduce stress. Forests can also help clean the air. Forests are a cost-effective way to clean the air and water. Property values tend to decrease when trees are removed. By contrast, when there are trees, it adds to property value. And this will become more of an impact in Garner as more and more trees are removed. Crime reduction. Studies in Chicago, Youngstown, and other cities show there is a strong relationship between higher levels of tree canopy and lower levels of crime, regardless of socioeconomic factors. Aggression is lower when nature is nearby. Wildlife habitat and biodiversity. Forest-dwelling animals are threatened because of deforestation from sprawling development. Forest trees and plants provide homes and habitats for these species and other urban wildlife that we enjoy. From my own personal experience, conversations with my neighbors often include their view of a specific experience with nature. For example, spotting a rabbit in their yard, watching a butterfly in their garden, a youngster's story of a toad or a turtle, the cool breeze that comes from the forest understory, birds they spot while out for a walk or sitting on their porch, the calming sound of nature from crickets and birds, the buffer from traffic, trains, and other city noises, and the simple beauty of the trees. This urban forest provides a wide range of benefits to our neighborhood, but it faces a challenge of development pressure and removal. The town of Garner must act quickly and thoughtfully to do more to preserve our valuable green canopies. As a member of Garner's Town Council, you can appreciate our urban forest improve livability, sustainability, resilience, and equity. Our green spaces are a priceless asset. I am asking for your support to protect this beautiful urban forest. Thank you for allowing me to speak during this public meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. And your references there are noted along with the what you just shared with us. I have it here. I'd read it before. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Was there anyone else who cared to speak on this issue? Okay. I'll recognize the gentleman behind you, and then, well, okay, either one. You can go first. Yeah. Okay. State your name and address, please, sir.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Johnson. I live at 101 Benning Hills Place in Garner. I guess I was just a little concerned about the condo-style townhomes. That seems a little densely packed for street parking, I suppose. I guess I would rather have it just all garage styles, I suppose. Secondly, there's going to be a gap on Sidewalk between Vandora West and this frontage as well. I was wondering if there's a way we could connect the two sidewalks. And thirdly, I believe the intersection at Vandora Springs and Garner Road, the left turn there is already fairly dangerous if you're turning left from Vandora onto Garner Road. I guess I would like to see maybe a red arrow with a green arrow controlling the flow of traffic, so that way straight traffic could flow freely. All right, thank you.
Sure. Okay, this gentleman here, the green shirt. Yes, sir. State your name and address, please, sir.
Rex Sugis. I live at 1218 Sutherland Road in Garner, North Carolina. And I'm here, I object to the...
Pull your mask down.
Sir, okay. I object to this, like that land is zoned, this whole neighborhood is zoned single-family homes. And that's all that's been there for like, what, 50, 60 years? And now this guy comes in here and wants to put, like, what, 75 buildings with, you figure 3 people, that's 100... That's like, I think like 225 people inside of 9 acres of land that's like right there at that area that's surrounded by single-family homes on like a half-acre land or more. And that's not conducive with the neighborhood. And like, you want to have like neighborhood, I don't know, getaway streets cutting off into the neighborhoods behind it, a lot of the apartments. And like, you look at those apartments there, the red buildings, you figure like you can have 2 and 3 bedroom houses there. You figure each one of them houses can have 3 guys and 3 people in the building. And then like if they're adults, if they have 3 cars, where are you gonna put like 3 cars in that neighborhood? Like the bumper, there's no parking like off the street. It's all on the street. How are they how's like a fire truck gonna get through that neighborhood in emergency or an ambulance or something like that? If you got like all those streets just packed bumper to bumper with cars all the time. That's ridiculous. And for this neighborhood, like, for somewhere else, North Raleigh or something like that, or somewhere like, what these guys, this builder, he builds like high-end, like nice homes, he says. And he builds these homes. Well, why doesn't he just take it, like he bought this land that was zoned single-family homes, why didn't he just build nice, like luxury homes there, down at like half-acre lots and stuff that he got there. He could build 18 nice houses there. He could sell those and stuff like that, and that'll be conducive with the neighborhood. This building of like townhouses and what do you call them, clubhouses? What do you call them in the single-family neighborhood? That doesn't make much sense. Not to the people that live there already. And that's what I got to say about it. And I'm just saying it's a hazard, and that you put that many, what do you say, 225 people and 10 acres of land right there on Garner Road. It's already a mess on traffic there. If you ever go down the road in the morning, like at 8 o'clock in the morning, or at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's already a big But you put 225 more people just in that little neighborhood there? It's not conducive with the structure that exists. That's all I got to say on it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Was anyone else who came to speak on this item? Okay, I'll hear for maybe, are you representing the same thoughts, or you got something new to share? We usually like to have one or two spokesmen who are sharing the same idea, but go ahead. Name and address.
So good evening. My name is Josh Corbett. I live at 1248 Curtis Drive here in Garner. Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you very much for being with us tonight and listening to all of our concerns. Just wanted to start by thanking specifically council members Dellinger, Singleton, and Matthews for your very astute questions to the developers and to the lawyer. It was really, as a resident, it was really nice to hear some of my primary foundational concerns already addressed. So I do appreciate that. I also want to take a second to thank the developer for the work that they put into this plan. It's a great plan when you really look at it, and it really does take into account some of the primary concerns that folks have. They want that natural buffer. The buffer is a lot bigger in areas than what is required, and I have to just state that that is really refreshing to see a developer do that. They do great work. I know they showed one picture here, but if you hop onto their website, it's clear that they do great work in the area. And so I just wanted to express that I appreciate that from my residential standpoint. Where my opinion kind of comes into this particular project is the difference between the current zoning and the proposed zoning is so dramatic. It's so different. My husband and I decided to move to Garner a little over 2 years ago now. We love it here. We could not have made a better choice in our minds. When you move to a place like this and you decide to live in a home and make this your home, there are a very few things that you can do to hedge your bets, so to speak, right? To know what you're getting into. And one of those things, I was happy, I'm happy that I was taught this as a young person from my parents and things like that. You look at the zoning and you look and see what the neighboring properties are zoned as. And when we saw that it was zoned as single family residential, it was a no-brainer to then sign the papers and just, wait for our move-in date that we were so highly anticipating. And so to see this dramatic shift in zoning from something that is already in the area, some really beautiful homes are in this area. We love living there. And then, I don't know if you realize this, but we're one of the properties that are right up against the new proposed rezoning. To have what we chose to live in so dramatically shifted, right? And so we live right at the end of the stub street in Curtis Drive. It would, I do have to point out, it does seem like it would make us feel as if now we are living in a community that is designed around townhomes. And just frankly put, that's not what we chose to put our investment of time and money into the town. So that's kind of where I land on that. I do also really want to thank the developer and council members that have brought up the idea that perhaps to make this something that is more, tenable for everyone, consider not punching the streets through, right? Consider keeping those stub streets as they are. Yes, it would take a rethinking of the transportation plan, and I understand there are safety concerns that need to be addressed. Please address them. I don't want anybody to be unsafe. I don't want anybody to have any issues with getting emergency vehicles in. But also bringing those two streets into this neighborhood would cause traffic issues, cut-throughs, things like that, and it would just change the nature of the neighborhood so much. The last point I want to make is, just like we've heard a little bit already today, traffic along Garner Road, it's a two-lane road in a lot of areas. Bringing 75 new homes in that are meant to be, occupied by 2+ people, that's a lot of traffic. And I think the point was made earlier that people are going to cut through this neighborhood to avoid the light. You better believe it. There's a lot of, let's call it creative driving that happens in the area already. And that's just going to be exacerbated. And so as a resident, I really hope we can avoid that. And I would ask the town council to please put this issue to rest tonight. Please vote no on recommending this to the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You used a term that I'm not sure I've heard before, and I tend to agree with it. I believe you said there's a lot of creative driving in our town. The way I define it and understand it, I think you're exactly right. There's too much speeding amongst other things. But at any rate, thank you. I think we've given everybody hopefully a good chance and allowed you to go over our general 3 to 5 minute rule, I guess. But at any rate, I believe that's all the persons that I saw raise their hands wanted to speak to this issue. Council, anybody else you need to hear from, want to hear from? If not, I'll, David, is there anything from Mr. Triesenberg by way of summary? I'm assuming not.
I don't have anything else. I'm just going to put the recommendation up on the screen for you.
Okay, all right. I'll go one last quick round by council just before I ask for the vote. If you have any closing observations you care to make, I'll start with Phil.
I know we're going to have to send this to the planning board. Again, as reiterated, as mentioned by Mr. Dillinger as well as Mr. Singleton and myself, if there's anything we can do on the stubbing situation, I think that would be of major importance to, that would give both neighborhoods their own identity and traffic wouldn't be going through there. And I feel confident that's something we probably can fix if this thing goes forward, and it'd be in everybody's best interest. So that's all my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Singleton, anything?
I have a lot of things, but I won't take up time. We'll get it later.
Okay. All right, Mr. Behringer. Okay, thank you.
I have a lot of things, and I'll take a little bit of Gray's time since he didn't want to use it.
Only a small portion, please.
Yeah, just a little bit of his time. First point, sort of out of context, I'd like to see when this comes back that residential cluster be removed as part of the rezoning. If Buffalo Grove is the example of that residential clustering and the benefits they get, there's no way I'd want to see this type of development there. The second thing is I want to commend, I don't do this very often, commend the developer on what they've presented. I don't think it's all the way there. I think there are a lot of good considerations that have been made. And I also think that, one, I think we need to address the garage issues on those condo townhomes. If that's something we need to do on the UDO side, we need to have that conversation. I just have real concerns about not knowing how many bedrooms are going to be, so you don't know how much parking, so you don't know how, just seeing the streets lined with cars is not a good look. On going back to the stub out that we've talked about, if we need to make some adjustments there, I think there's also maybe the opportunity for realigning some of this. The 100-foot buffer, I think, is great. That's a great concession. I think reducing that buffer, preventing that stub out, maybe doing some realignment to do some even more enhanced tree preservation on the southern part of that property. Since that's where the bulk of the older growth, at least from the satellite view, it seems like that's where the bulk of the older growth trees are. And I know there's the standard we have, it's pretty low right now, the 12 to 14. The new standard is going to be 20. It'd be better to see, you've put so much innovation into the design. I'd like to see some even more innovation in terms of tree preservation. So again, I think there are a lot of pieces we're working with to move around. So I think, I think I send it on the Planning Commission with these comments. Thank staff, they do a great job of getting these comments in front of Planning Commission for them to consider. And then I'm also interested in the DOT stuff as that comes around. Oh, that's a little out of order for the rezoning itself, but those are my only comments for the record.
Thank you. Mr. Vance?
No comments on this.
Okay. I think...
I'm going to make one quick comment, take a minute back.
All right, go right ahead, Mr. Singer.
I understand the stub-out connection to Curtis Drive. We've been doing stub-out connections for years. The concern is this, not only with cut-through traffic, but the cut-through traffic will be going to a non-signalized intersection on Garner Road, which is usually more dangerous. I agree also with what Mr. Coleman said, that most people coming into here are not going to be traveling through Curtis Drive unless they're going back to visit someone back in that neighborhood. So what you're doing is we're encouraging cut-through traffic to avoid the stoplight and go to a non-signalized intersection, which is not as safe. That's one of the big concerns I have there. Willa Vista, Trace, if it needs to have a cul-de-sac put in, then put a cul-de-sac in to make it safer for a turnaround. I don't disagree with that. We have several older neighborhoods that dead end and don't have a place that may be per our ordinance now and a safety requirement. But I have a lot of connections with that. And the issue with the parking on the condo townhomes is, I mean, it's going to look like a multifamily apartment complex. The parking lot, there's a parking lot, there's going to be cars lined up, and you drive through the middle. That's exactly what it's going to be. I don't know how many cars are stubbed out for each townhome. If it's 2 for each one, I'm not sure. I do like the alleyway project that you have on these townhomes down on the Curtis Drive front, but the parking looks like it's going to be a mess. It's just going to be a parking lot. It's going to be like multifamily, which is what it is. It's a different form of multifamily. And it's going to be cars parked on both sides, and you drive through the middle. I'll be quiet.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Triesenberg, was there anything? I'm going to call for a vote, close the hearing here in just a minute. Do you want to say anything else?
No, I was just going to say, I know I've been taking notes on this. I would encourage you to consider sending it still to the Planning Commission. I think there's some alternatives that we can work through with the applicant. There may be some give and take here and there, but I do think there may be some opportunities to potentially, keep this as a potential project moving forward. That will be better.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Okay. All right, council, I'm going to close the public hearing. We've had a good airing of all the issues, I think. And as you know, the action asked for tonight is simply to refer this to the Planning Commission for plan consistency review and recommendations, so it'll come back to us, obviously. So, council, this
So moved.
ready for a motion. Moved and seconded down here, okay. No further discussion. If you favor the motion.
I have one more
okay, go
quick
ahead.
comment, and it is on for the benefit of the public and the rezoning. It was mentioned in the public meeting, I think, that the way this is zoned right now, seeing how developers come in and they tear down every single tree they possibly can without the rezoning, that's what somebody could do right now. This affords us the opportunity, or the developer the opportunity, to do something a little more creative, a little more density. It's not too dense, but also kind of get a little bit more consideration for the environment as they do the development. So just want to put that on the record as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ellinger. Okay, motion's properly before us. Council, if you favor the motion that has been made, would you vote aye?
Aye.
Aye.
If there's any opposition, would you vote no? Okay, and it's so ordered. And before we move to the next item, I want to thank all of you who appeared here this evening. Thank you for the courteous way you conducted yourselves on an issue that many of you have strong concerns about. But this is the way, in my view, we have public discussions and do them in a courteous way. So thank you all. As you know, the action's been taken, so you'll have a chance to come back in and when the thing comes back before council. Thank you all. If you want to stick around for the rest of the meeting, you can, but those of you who have an interest can leave at this time.
And
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Mayor, also just to remind that they could also attend the Planning Commission meeting as well to get it's another opportunity for input in the process.
Yes, okay, thank you.
And I'll say that the tentative date would be February the 14th.
Or when it comes back to this council, is that right? No, that the,
Planning Commission.
I'm sorry, you're right, yeah, okay. Comes back to us, okay, thank you. All right, I believe, Mr. Bamford, you up again for the, we're at item I, new and old business, is that right?
Yes, sir, we got
Additional zoning map amendment with CZ, yeah, okay. So we'll hear from you at this time, sir.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is a conditional district zoning request. This has gone to public hearing, or let me back up. It's gone to a neighborhood meeting, public hearing, planning commission, and is now back before you tonight for a decision. This case is CZSB 21-02. The specific request is to rezone 11.08 acres from office and institutional conditional use District 92 to multifamily 1 conditional use District 244 for the development of a 59-lot townhome community at a density of 5.3 units per acre. Zoning conditions are proposed that limit the range of uses, and there are also architectural and site conditions proposed as well. This is a vicinity map of the project boundary. It's outlined in black. The area in gray or light blue is the areas in Garner that are currently annexed inside the town limits. So the west of Timber Drive, Grovemont, and south of Grovemont Road, that is inside Garner zoning jurisdiction, but outside the corporate limits. So this map shows the areas that are currently annexed. The eastern portion of the project site is annexed. The western portion directly next to Timber Drive is not. If this project gets approved and moves forward, we would require an annexation petition from the developer to bring that inside the town limits. Going over the vicinity of the area, north is Garner High School. Spring Drive runs along the eastern boundary of the site. Spring Road runs along the western boundary and stubs into the site. Old Buckhorn Road is south of the site in the single-family neighborhood, so single-family use is south of the site. We do have apartment multifamily uses directly to the east along this area here. Farther east, we do have more single-family homes. North of the high school, we do have a commercial activity center, Garner Town Square, with commercial development. And to the northwest, we have single-family homes as well inside the town limits. So the commercial activity center is located around Timber Drive and Highway 70 West. And as you move south, you start to transition and lower intensity. And farther south, the land uses are single family. This map shows the existing zoning. So the current zoning of the rezoning project site is office and institutional conditional use. The school is zone R15. That's a single family zone, but it also allows schools. The neighborhoods that are inside the town limits that are annexed are zone R12. The neighborhoods that are outside the town limits on well and septic, those are zoned R20. R20 allows single family on 20,000 square foot lots, about half acre. The apartments along the eastern boundary of the high school, those were zoned multifamily 2. And I believe those were rezoned and developed just after 1972. North of the high school, we have commercial zoning, heavy commercial where Home Depot is located, office and institutional zoning where the satellite school site is, where the old movie theater was. This list shows the zoning history in this vicinity of Garner. Southside Shopper was rezoned in 1987. Garner Town Square was rezoned in 1996. The rezoning site history is the chart below there. In 1972, it was zoned R15. After 1972, it was rezoned to multifamily 2, and then in 1999, it was rezoned to office and institutional conditional District 92. Most recent rezoning case was in 2012, where the old movie theater was rezoned to office and institutional conditional use to allow the school use that's currently there now. The office institutional district is a district that allows professional offices. The current zoning has zoning restrictions put in place, and the uses are restricted to only the following: office, clerical, research services, libraries, museums, art galleries, art centers, and similar uses. And as noted below, these uses would be approvable at the administrative staff level. It would not come to council for review for the site plan, so any development under the current zoning would likely be approvable at staff level. This is a conditional application, and the applicant is proposing use restrictions and also some site and architectural conditions. So number one, permissible uses would be restricted to townhomes only. So all other uses allowed in the MF1 district, such as apartments or condominiums or duplexes, would not be allowed on the site. I will walk through the conditions. The maximum density shall not exceed 6 dwelling units per acre. The development shall include an approximately 9,000 square foot community gathering space that includes benches and picnic table, seating beneath a pergola, a paver patio, and a play lawn area. Each dwelling unit constructed on the property shall contain a minimum of 1,300 heated square feet. Number 6, each townhouse unit shall have at least a one-car garage with carriage hardware and windows. And the next condition states that the water heater will not be located in the garage to allow more room for parking and storage. Number 7, the front facade of each townhouse unit will include the following treatments: A, a covered entry; B, at least 3 operable windows; at least the bottom sash of the window can be opened; and 1 entry door; C, at least 1 2-foot horizontal offset per every 2 units. 8, each townhouse unit shall include at least 2 of the following siding types on the front facade: A, board and batten; B, horizontal lap siding; and or C, shake siding. 9, end units shall have a masonry wainscoting down the side or a trim board separating different siding. 10, each townhouse group defined as a building containing 4 to 6 townhouse units shall include at least 3 colors, not including trim on the front facade. 11, all townhouse units shall have fiber cement lap siding. Trim elements such as windows, eaves, fascia, columns, and soffits may be vinyl or aluminum. 12, all residential building site elevations shall have at least 2 operable windows. 13, all units shall have a minimum 12-inch, that's a typo, 12-inch roof overhang on front and rear. On end units of each townhouse group, the side roof overhang shall be 12 inches. 6-foot solid fence to be installed along buffer to property south of the development and north of the development, excluding riparian buffer area. And lastly, development of this site shall be completed in conformance with the approved subdivision plan. So going over the subdivision plan, area is 11.08 acres. The max units allowed under the MF1 density is approximately 106 units. Under the proposal, this would be capped at 59 units. The minimum width for a townhome unit is 18 feet. This is another typo here. We did have a text change a few years back where the minimum width for a townhome went from 25 to 18. So 18 is the current minimum width for a townhome. Setbacks, 25 feet front, side 15 feet, rear 25, and corner side 25. This subdivision master plan. So since the public hearing, the applicant has met with NC.DOT to work out an option to remove the street connection from Spring Road into the project site and punch straight out to Timber Drive. The sand filter is located here. The dog park is the green area over, I guess, in the southeast corner of the school site along Spring Drive. The mail kiosk and dumpster locations will be located along the northern portion of the site north of the street, next to the school, away from the single-family homes to the south. The community area, amenity area would be located here. This is near the roundabout, which is in the center of the site. The school property will still have an access easement here. They have no plans to use it at this time, but they do want to keep that as an option if that is ever needed in the future. Moving on to traffic. Again, here's some changes since the public hearing. NC.DOT has given preliminary approval to direct access on Timber Drive. This eliminates connection to Spring Road over the school property. Engineering staff have noted long-term benefit of disconnecting Spring Road from Timber Drive and making it a cul-de-sac off the road in this new development. This would require cooperation between NC.DOT and the Wake County Public School System. And that's what this looks like. So I'm going to go back to the slide. Again, this is an option from the engineering department to disconnect Spring Road from Timber Drive here. Landscape buffer requirements. Again, changes since the public hearing. The developer will survey all vegetative material in the southern perimeter buffer that is 4-inch diameter and above. This ensures existing significant vegetation is retained and provides staff with exact counts for determining how much replacement material must be provided. Again, these are changes since the public hearing. Lighting for streets and common areas have to meet the Unified Development Ordinance. Stormwater management has to meet our ordinance. Water lines and hydrants have to meet City of Raleigh public utility requirements and also meet Garner fire requirements as well. All landscaping and parking will also be re-verified. A complete summary is in your staff report. We're just going to go through several bullets. This is from the Planning Commission summary that was held on December the 13th. Commission concerns and questions, and I'll just go through these. Questions about the posted speed limit for the site, and can emergency services navigate the traffic circle or roundabout that's proposed in the middle of the project. Questions about sidewalk connections. Questions about will other allowable uses be considered for the rezoning. Questions about uses and height limits for the existing zoning, which is office and institutional conditional use. Questions about the access easement to the school. Noise concerns. Question about was it regarding the townhomes or the school. Questions about location and height of the proposed fencing. questions about street lighting, and about the realignment of the proposed road to Timber Drive. Wake County, there was a representative from Wake County Public Schools at the Planning Commission meeting, and they stated that they have looked at the site over the years but never found a use that would fit the uniqueness of the property. So they've looked at the site and do not feel like they have a use for the property. Moving on to neighbor concerns and questions. Again, the full summary is in your staff report. There was appreciation for removing the earlier proposed connection to Spring Road, concerns with light and noise impacts from the baseball fields. Single-family medical office or a museum would be a better use for the site. Concern about the proximity of the homes to the existing neighbors. Concerns about the proposed density, that it was too high. There was concerns with impacts to Grovemont Road. Concerns about traffic and visual and noise impacts. Consistency of the request. So now we're going to go through the long-range plan and also the other adopted plans of the town. The Garner Forward future land use map. Staff notes that it's inconsistent, but the proposal is less intense. The Garner Forward plan recommends multifamily residential on this site, and that could support apartments, garden style, up to 4 stories in height. And usually those are in the range of 13 to 14 units an acre. The proposed townhomes are at a density of 5.3 units per acre. So this proposal is inconsistent with the future land use map, but it is less intense. And this is the future land use map here. So the future land use is multifamily residential, which is the same category as the apartments along the eastern boundary of the high school. Medium density residential are the areas where the current single family homes are, and medium density is 2.5 to 5 units an acre. The Garner Forward Transportation Plan, staff notes that this proposal is consistent. Timber Drive is identified as a 4-lane divided roadway. As such, it is already built out. The transportation plan also calls for sidewalks along Timber Drive and Spring Drive, which are again already existing. There are no other recommendations on or adjacent to the project site. Therefore, this plan is consistent with the transportation plan. Staff notes that it's consistent with the Parks, Recreation, Greenways, and Cultural Resources Master Plan. This site is not designated as a park land search area. And additional info is in your staff report. Consistency statement. While this request to rezone 11.08 acres from office and institutional conditional use 92 to multifamily residential 1, conditional use district 244, is consistent with several of Garner's land use related plans. It is inconsistent with the future land use map's designation of multifamily residential, which calls for multi-story and higher density condos or apartment developments. Staff commentary. While the request is inconsistent with the future land use map, staff believes a reasonable case can be made for supporting the overall request. Some of those were presented to Planning Commission for their review. Number 1, the proposed MF1 district and townhomes are similar in character with the townhouse style and 2-story apartments located east along Spring Drive and Forest Ridge Road. Number 2, fee simple townhomes would be less intense use next to the Woodlands single-family subdivision on Buckhorn Road than garden-style apartments, thus providing a softer transitional use between the neighborhood and the high school and also the commercial uses to the north. Reasonableness. The town council must also approve a statement of reasonableness when making their decision. And this is based on the Garner plans and policies that we've just covered. A recommendation: despite the identified inconsistency, staff supports the reflected in section 3 of this report, recommends town council approval of the planning commission's statement of consistency as amended in section 6 of this report, and further recommends approval of zoning amendments CZ SB 21-02 request as a reasonable one. Please see your worksheet in your report. We would like to note that a future land use map amendment would be concurrent with any council approval. And if this happens, the site would be redesignated from multifamily residential to a step down to high density residential, which calls for single family duplex, triplex, quadplex, and townhome style residences at a density of not less than 5 units per acre. So the current designation on the future land use map recommends apartments under multifamily residential. The map amendment, if this is approved, would be at the high density residential, which does not recommend apartments as a future land use. That concludes staff's presentation. We'll be happy to answer questions. The applicant is here. The engineering department is here also to answer questions. And Jeff Triesenberg, planning director, is here as well on Teams.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bamford. We'll go maybe about 5 or 10 minutes to see how far we go with the questions, and then I'm probably going to take a recess no later than 9:15, if that's okay with council. Questions for Mr. Bamford? I'll start with Ms. Behringer. Okay, Mr. Singleton.
I have questions because I have concern of the use of a softer transitional use, the language that it's softer. And I base it off the site plan. I have yet to figure out. Here we have 59 townhomes that are proposed. I counted all the single-family homes I can see, the lots close to it. There are 26. Now, you tell me how 26, which are close to it, and then have 59 in between is soft. There ain't nothing soft about it. We're trying to cram 10 gallons of product in a 5-gallon bucket. Plain and simple. I went back there and walked all this area. It's hard to believe how narrow it is. We're going to put the townhomes, the buffer of the street, the 55-foot right-of-way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is an infill project, and some of y'all to vote for it, you're right. I don't want us to see us cramming stuff in every infill place in Garner. This is just, we're trying to put too much product in a small place. I was on the council when we changed it from apartments to O&I. True, O&I use can warrant more traffic during daylight hours and daytime hours. I appreciate the applicants working with DOT to connect the timber, which creates another problem because there's no dedicated right turn lane in. And it makes me think of other projects that are along or being proposed or talked about in other parts of town. How close it is to the signal. Anyway, the softer transition may be about what it could be. I don't call having 59 townhouses behind 26 houses stretched from here to here a softer transition. I was always taught when we were on the council that the business was a softer transaction to the school. So while that technically may be a softer transaction, in my mind, it's technically not a softer transaction. It's crammed as much product back there as we can get. That's not a question. It's just questioning the use of a softer transition use between the neighborhood and the high school. I don't see anything soft about cramming as much back there as we can get.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Matthews, anything for Mr. Bamford?
Yes, sir. I didn't walk it. I drove back there as far as I could go. But the spring, was it, look at my notes here, is it Spring Road where it stubs right now? Now, what was the purpose of trying to flip that back around? And is there anything wrong with the way it is right now? Because it stubs out right and it's done, and that neighborhood, it don't have to be a part of this, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, we were just talking about this. Basically, the new Spring Road extension out to Timber will create the basic east-west connectivity between Timber and Spring Drive out to Van Dorn Springs towards Town Hall, that whole area. We had brought this up as an alternative, whether it is done this way or not. People that are on this existing dead end, in order to get out east Van Dorn Springs, they'll simply be turning right out of Timber, going north, and immediately turning right and going right back through the same development. So the only other way is to do a U-turn at Grovemont, go all the way down to Woodland to Van Dorn Springs, or make your way all the way around the Garner High School to get out. So this was just another option, but the traffic pattern, make no mistake about it, people are going to use the new Spring Road connection to get out east. The new street that connects to Spring Road.
Okay, Phil, was there anything else?
It's just, it was a potential opportunity there, so that don't have to be that way. That would not impact this development if it's left as it was, correct?
No, but you'll still have people using that connection to get through, to go east.
Oh, to go back.
This was all basically because of the Timber Drive coming through and bisecting the old development into the north and south sides. If you go to the other side of Timber Drive, they immediately cul-de-saced it just like this, because they could, and they had to get traffic out. Where on this particular spot, you would have been stranding them with no access. So they had to give them the access to Timber. From an access management standpoint, you don't really want to have two accesses that close. And so, I mean, this is just access management. I'm sure the people that live there don't want that right now, and that's fine. We just wanted to provide that alternative and make it clear that that's going to be a connection. People are going to be doing that movement clockwise to get out that way if they're going east.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Johnson?
I like magic shows, like the Carbonaro effect and Magic for Humans. And I feel like I'm on there now because we're seeing this isn't consistent, this isn't consistent, this isn't consistent, but there's a little grain of reasonableness in here you should have. And when I'm looking at the motion, it's inconsistent yet reasonable, yet the only two things checked in here: mixed housing types in infill areas in harmony with adjoining older neighborhoods. There's no harmony with adjoining over other neighborhoods with this project. That's what we've heard from the very beginning. The other is cluster townhomes, ancillary units, single-family homes, attached and detached homes with similar design characteristics where they can live compatibly. I don't even know what that means, so I can't. There's no standard of reasonableness met with this. The other question I have, or concern I have, is the preliminary nature of the DOT approval for that road connection. We had this discussion at another meeting. Is it approved? Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? So a huge level of uncertainty that even if it stays O&I, it's got to be resolved. So that's not particular to this. My other question is, my other big concern is this project has changed so much, and we haven't had there's not another opportunity officially for the public to have input on it. Because this is very different. The options with cul-de-sacs and the options with this, and there's not technically another public hearing for the public to weigh in, gives me concern as well. So I have a couple other points, but I will pass on to anyone else who has something to contribute.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Mr. Vance at this time if he has anything.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just say that as our supply of land within Garner dwindles, and based upon what we have in our UDOs and our comprehensive plan, I see more projects like this coming down to us where it's going to be tight when it comes to trying to develop it. And in reference to what has been stated, to the degree of what's being proposed with the cul-de-sacking of, is that, I get the roads mixed up, is that Spring Road, cul-de-sac of Spring Road? Okay. With that one, going back, and that one's still in the air, even if this is approved, if it'll be approved by DOT, is that correct? If that was up in the air. It's not a definite.
You're referring to the new connection?
The cul-de-sac.
Oh, the cul-de-sac. No, that's just been an alternative that we talked about internally as an alternative option. I would think that DOT would not want to have those two axes that close together, but they would probably allow it since it's an existing condition, sort of grandfather condition. But they did approve the connection, new connection out.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Good enough. Good enough. So, again, with that being, I don't know the public involvement piece on that when it comes to cul-de-sacking, closing off an interest, and going back to the public so they can know what's going on with it. There's just a lot going on with this particular piece of property here that we just have to think through this whole process. But I believe that we're going to continue to have these type problems, and with other developments, because the supply of property is becoming tight throughout. So we just got to think through how we're going to how we're going to look at these developments going forward.
Okay, thank you. Let me just get a feel for how many other people plan to speak here. We have the applicant here, I guess. Who from the applicant plans to speak? Who? Okay. And who from the general public hopes to speak on this matter? One, okay. I'm inclined to declare a brief recess to give everybody a chance to kind of catch their breath and come back to this and hear from these other couple of people. But I'll be sensitive what council's preferences are. We usually do try to give ourselves a break at 9 o'clock. We're already at 9:15. So, council, you want to weigh in on the matter? We can take a 10-minute break and come back if you want to. But if you want to hear from these other folks while they're here. Anybody?
I'd like to move on through with it, Mr. Mayor, and be done with it, this particular item.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think I would feel better moving forward since we got a momentum and got everything clear in our heads for the moment.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. I'm seeing some thumbs up or whatever. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, David. We will hear, I guess, from the applicant at this time, or whoever represents the applicant. Please. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey there, good evening. Rahab Hamid with Trial and Property. I'm part of the development team. I have with me here Craig Dewar, who's the original project manager on this project, Stephen Faber with Stewart Engineering. We also did have, even though we were not required to have a traffic impact analysis, we did have Dr. Bahong with VHB take a look at this plan. David, if you don't mind, if we can go, yeah, perfect. I won't spend too much time going through this, just to be cognizant of the time. Staff did do a great job with the summary of the plan. We are offering housing diversity, connectivity, stormwater mitigation, infrastructure improvements, and some of the economics that we have not talked through are $100,000 in parks and rec fees that will be part of this development. I'm going to quickly go through these because I think it's more important to save the time for questions. Next slide, please. Connectivity. So Timber Drive, the connection to Timber Drive was actually made as a result of coming out of the first public hearing. The slide that David and Chris were showing with the proposed cul-de-sac is not actually as our plan. So our plan is actually connecting straight to Timber Drive. That conversation is a future conversation, if I'm not mistaken, that is internally, am I saying that accurately? is not as part of this plan, but something that Garner would like to work with DOT and the school system on.
It was something that was discussed internally after the Planning Commission meeting. So the current plan, is correct, does not show that. We wanted to provide that as an alternative just to get that conversation started because of the fact that if this was a development that where it was coming in and you didn't have that old alignment get cut in half, this would kind of be the kind of layout that most governments and DOT would look to have more internal circulation and less connectivity to timber. So we just wanted to put that out there as a possible alternative. Because at some point, it's also possible that those lots may need water or septic service, or the septics may die. You might need to have water service, and having that interconnectivity helps that as well.
So the plan as shown with the direct connection to Timber Drive and not to Spring Road is the plan that is presented and that we are proposing to be built. So just want to make sure that I address Councilman Vance's point as to what may or may not be. So it's just the straight street through. And I do know Miss Young is here as well. She lives on Spring Road, and I'm sure she'll be probably discussing that alternative. Next slide, please, David. Thank you. So this development here is pretty unique. It is an urban site. It is an infill site. And with that, we do have several access points out. I understand the perspective of it's 59 townhomes, but if you take a look at this network here, it shows how some of that traffic can disperse. We are also going to be connecting all sidewalks. So the walkability of this site for the 59 townhomes to Garner Magnet High School, to Fuller Magnet Elementary, potentially to Van Dora Springs Elementary, and to the shopping district is a pretty unique opportunity. And one that we think will be not only a great selling point, but one that keeps some traffic off the roads. Next slide, please. I won't spend too much time on this one. This is the same site plan that you have seen. Next one, David, thank you. Well, this is flipped, but Councilman Behringer had a point in the first meeting in regards to cut through traffic and students and student parking. So I wanted to show this slide, even though it's a bit flipped. The parking lot that is actually closest to where our local street will connect to Spring Drive is the bus and staff parking. It is not the student parking lot. So the direct access to get to the student parking lot would actually come through the traffic light of Grovemont and Timber. I have teenagers that drive. They will not take that roundabout road, go from a roundabout and deem that to be the shortest route. We also have a traffic light at Grovemont and Woodland. And I think last slide, we kind of went through this pretty quickly, but we are pretty proud of the architectural enhancements that we've provided through this rezoning. Like the previous development, we are also not going to be doing vinyl siding on this townhome. This is representative of what would be built here. They are one-car garage townhomes. Again, they will all have garages with them. And happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Hey, Council. Questions for this? I'll start with Mr. Vance this time.
Not at this moment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Dellinger.
Briefly, was it ever a consideration to just go ahead and connect Spring Drive all the way to the existing Spring Drive, since there's already a light there, instead of creating another entrance on Timber, which is kind of on a blind curve a little bit at 45 if you drive down Timber? Where this exit is, I have a lot of concerns about the speed and people not being able to see people turning out. But has there ever been a consideration to work with the school system, just make Spring Drive a complete loop around?
I'm trying to get a visual of, so originally, it's confusing with the names. Originally Spring Road connected through our local street and then connected to Spring Drive. Is that the loop?
Yeah. So you have spring, so spring goes all the way around, right?
That's right.
So is there ever consideration of where it goes to Grovemont, continuing to go south into the subdivision and connecting there instead of creating an entirely new, because when it first came to us as Spring Road, connecting to Spring Drive, and that wasn't going to work. And then you come back and it's connecting directly to Timber. Was there ever any discussion about just looping it up to the existing Spring Drive and Grovemont?
I think I understand now. So there's around the baseball field. Is
Yep.
that correct? So there's a stream there, and then the access to dump out to where the traffic light is on Grovemont and Timber is too close. I think that's, am I reading the right location that
Yeah.
you're referencing?
It's too close to what?
To the actual traffic light, because then you have traffic. So that, if we were to connect there, then oncoming traffic that's turning in right off of Timber Drive or left off of Timber Drive, it's too clustered there.
I see what you're saying.
That's number one. Number two, the stream is there, and we were actually originally going to be running the water line up where you see the green. Raleigh has actually requested that we cross over or under Timber to connect the water line where it's, if you can see where it's actually pointed to right there, because there is significant topography issues in the part that you reference.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Behringer. Thank you. Mr. Singleton.
Show the view that you had that was supposed to be the aerial view, that right there. Now, if this doesn't justify what I was saying a minute ago with the single-family home spaced over here and the school over here and all that density in that little tract right there, I don't know what does. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Mr. Matthews.
Mr. Singleton certainly brings up a whole lot of points here, and I'll just leave it at that also.
Okay. I think, do you want to have another person speak? Come on up if you will.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight two things that were brought up.
Give us your name and address.
I'm sorry. My name's Craig Dewar with Land Alternatives, 403 April Bloom Lane, Cary, North Carolina. The two things I wanted to comment on that I've heard the questions from council is how different this plan is from previous public hearings. And I wanted to highlight this plan has one fundamental difference. It's the connection to Timber Drive. There's no other changes to this layout than what you guys saw 3 months ago or 2 months ago, what's been discussed with the property owners, what was discussed in public hearing at the planning board. The only thing preventing this project from moving forward at that time was the connectivity issues, and we worked diligently with DOT to get that resolved. DOT does have an approval process, but you can't get the approval until you get a site plan approval. Then you got to get CD approval. That's just the steps in the process with DOT. But that's the only change, is a connection. And with respect to this I understand what you're saying, Councilman Singleton. I think, as I understand what planning is saying, it's a softer transition than multifamily apartments, because multifamily apartments is much more intense than the townhomes. Townhomes is much less intense than office. So that's the planning terminology they're using, but I can understand where you're coming from. It's not as soft as you would like to see from single family, but it is softer from a land use than a 4-story apartment dwelling. And I think that's what, at least that's what I'm understanding the statement to say. So I just wanted to clarify those 2 points.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else from the applicant? Was anybody else going to speak? Okay. Okay, council. I hope we're at the point where we can wrap this up.
Yeah, somebody from the public.
Excuse me.
Ms. Young.
You are so right. Would you please introduce yourself?
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. I'm Melinda Young. I live at 5502 Spring Road
which is the little triangle area. I call it a peninsula of that area. We live right there. And I do want to thank the people who were talking about doing the building for looking into getting that road on timber and not bringing it through us, because that was going to cause a great deal of trouble, and that did help. That being said, I kind of feel like I'm in a trick show too, because this new thing about the cul-de-sac just came up last week, and we until then had heard nothing from that. I had not even heard what he just said about worrying about us turning, I guess. I didn't understand it. And going through there to get to the other side, I didn't really understand that. We wouldn't do that. We don't do that now. So I don't know what that comes from. The explanation I got through email was that was for potential growth. There is no potential growth. Those houses are the only ones there. It was a junkyard for 60-something years that Miss Edna Stiles up on the top of the road there asked Garner for 50 years to please do something about it, and nobody would ever do anything about it. Now suddenly it's cleaned up and somebody wants to build something in there. I see no reason to put a cul-de-sac there. That forces us to become a part of a neighborhood that we didn't want going in there to begin with. And that's just not morally right. That is just not ethically right to do that. So I'm very against that. That being said, the last one, those people were given 100 feet. I wish they would give us 100 feet. Of course, then, we'd probably be joined with the school property, but that looks like a lot of space there that's really not there when you walk that property. And that is the only significant group of trees on our road from Woodlands all the way down to 70. There aren't any other trees in that area. And I know she mentioned wildlife. I was told by the people surveying it that was all right. They'll find another place to live, which to me was kind of a nonchalant answer anyway, and a little cold. But, we've got 15 or 25-foot buffers going up in our area. We don't have that 100-foot buffer. And I know they put up there the concern about the noise and stuff. Yes, we're concerned about extra noise coming into our neighborhoods from cars and people in that dense of a space. But we're also concerned of the noise coming into that area from the school, because we already hear that. We already see those lights, and it's going to be right on that property. So then you come down to who's going to pay the money to buy those. Yeah, they're going to know about it ahead of time, and so they're going to say, no, I'm not. So then we end up giving away housing that was unnecessary to begin with in that area. I just don't know. I just don't understand a lot of it. The zoning change, the guy that was talking about moved here 2 years ago, same thing. We bought this property 2 years ago. I researched it. I thought, office and institutional, that's great, because that means they're saving that for future school growth. Former teacher, former coach, I understand that. But now that's being taken away too. But I was like, okay, well, I can live with that over there. But it turned into something totally different than what I thought. But that's kind of neither here nor there as far as you're concerned, I'm sure. That change was made in '99. I'm kind of stretching here, but I kind of think that change was probably made because of the school. Initially, instead of doing the multi-family housing or whatever, it was changed for the school to have that buffer space there. The school says that they don't know how they would use the property. However, she also told me right after that same meeting that she asked them to please give that land to the school so that it would remain there. And they wouldn't do that, obviously, because of
money. This whole thing turns into a money issue, and it's going back and forth because we want to kind of stay secluded like we are as much as we can, and then everybody else wants the money and the growth. I mean, if I've been trying to win that lottery, I hadn't done it yet, but I'd buy the property and give it to the school because, I mean, it's just such a narrow space. Anyway, my biggest concern right now, which I think is probably what was intended, is that cul-de-sac. I don't know where Garner or anyone thinks that that is going to help our situation or improve it. It forces us to do something we don't want to do, be a part of a neighborhood we didn't even approve of anyway. And we all have brand new wells and brand new septic. So we do not want the city water and sewer coming in. We don't need it. Down the road, we'll put in a new one if we have to. It's going to be a long time away, though. Miss Edna's been up there 70 years or 60 years, and she said she's never had a single problem with any of that with her house. The only problem she had was being able to get the junkyard moved. That cul-de-sac there, we've looked at the other cul-de-sacs they're talking about, you know, in the initial plan. We've looked at those cul-de-sacs. People go into those cul-de-sacs to change oil. They leave the trash line around there. The one right across the street from us, which was originally the other Spring Road, I assume, has a truck that has been parked out there the 2 years that I have lived here, and no one's made it move. People are going to park vehicles there. We're going to get all the parking because there's not enough parking in there for visitors. It's all going to come into our road. And people are all going to put those cars down on that cul-de-sac and along our road. We do not need it. It's not necessary. The U-turns, we're going to make them anyway. Even if we had to come out the other side, we're still going to have to make the same exact U-turns. That's not going to be a difference. The only difference is we're going to have to fight more cars. We also have a 40-foot camper. Can you see us we pull it up just to load and unload and clean and stuff. Can you see us pulling that 40-foot camper into that right turn right there? That's crazy.
And we've listened pretty patiently. Can you sort of wrap it up in the next
Yes,
moment?
I will wrap it up.
Please.
We don't want that cul-de-sac at all.
Yeah.
We'd prefer not to have any of it, but we definitely don't want that cul-de-sac. So, you know, I just hope these magic tricks quit going. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Yep, thank you. Okay. I believe that was the last person who had indicated a desire to speak here. So, council, it's decision time. You have before you what is recommended by staff. You've heard various viewpoints here. This piece of land obviously is intriguing in the sense of its limitations, but the applicant has tried to create something there that he thinks would be usable and to the benefit of some. At any rate, without further commentary, I'm going to ask the council, if you will, to decide if you're ready to make a motion on this item. You have the ordinance there before you. If your preference is to adopt the ordinance, if not, then you can vote otherwise. But anything before we vote or before we get a motion anyway?
Just one quick comment on the buffering and the consistency. There are already buffer reductions to make this even come close to fitting, from 35 to 24 and 15 to 10. It just, its very nature is not very compatible with that property. That's my only comment.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? All right. Council, it's time to vote. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Mayor, I move the town council not accept the planning commission's written statement regarding consistency of the zoning amendment request with adopted land use plan detailed in Section 6 of the staff report, and find the request inconsistent to being inconsistent and unreasonable in regards to the Garner Forward Plan of 2018, and I further move the town deny zoning CZ SB 2102 as the request is not reasonable or in the public interest because it will likely create a density of houses which is significantly higher than the properties that it backs up to on Spring Road and Buckhorn Road.
Okay, Council, you have a motion before you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion properly made and seconded. I think we've aired the circumstance pretty thoroughly. Before we vote, I'll ask for any final comments. Okay, hearing none. If you favor the motion, this does not approve this, would you vote aye?
Aye.
Aye.
If you oppose the motion that was made, would you vote no?
No.
Okay. Declare that the vote is 4-1 in favor of the motion, and this particular ordinance is not passed, is denied at this time. Thank you all for your patience and for your sharing information. I don't think I have any other commentary to make at this time. Council has done what I believe it feels is the best thing in this particular circumstance, and we'll have to go with that. So with that, I'm going to call a short recess, give us all the time to catch our breath, and so I'll ask council to be back in the next 7 to 10 minutes. Declare we're adjourned, and we'll come back and finish our agenda at that time. Thank you. Okay, I'll gavel us back into session. We will pick up on our agenda with committee reports. And I'm not aware of any, but council, anybody have a committee report at HR?
Well, I just want to say that we just found out there is one position that came open recently on the planning commission that we will be working diligently to try to get filled in the very near future on that. Found out about it, and Mr. Dillinger and I just got to go through further discussion on it. Report from us in the near future.
And maybe I should mention, I'm trying to remember if I mentioned it the previous meeting, but essentially the committee structure that we had has remained in place unless there was a specific need to readjust, and so that's essentially where I've been on the committees. If a council member wants to discuss further any of your assignments, I think most all the committees are functioning quite well, and if there are some committees that aren't meeting that often or don't have that much to do, let me know and I can take a look-see at that. But right now, I think they're all set. So thank you very much. Manager reports, Mr. Dickerson.
Yes, Mayor, Town Council, you have the standard reports. We include Garner info, a building permit report, and then you also have a financial report, quarterly financial report. And there is a report in your packet for the capital project status, and if you have any questions about that, I think town engineer Mr. Johnson is prepared to highlight some of the things in that report if you would like to hear any highlights, or it's up to you.
I haven't looked at them in depth yet, so at some point I'd like to hear more, but I don't know that we have to do it tonight. I know we have some other matters to take care of, but
is there anything
you're
in particular we need to tell them about?
I think there wasn't a lot to talk about. Mostly, the biggest projects we've got, White Oak Roundabout and Lake Drive are both in acquisition, and we've got Van Dor Springs Road has started construction, but we are going to have a little bit of a delay on that because of supply chain issues with pipe. It's just the construction industry. We knew that going in, but there'll probably be about a 30-day hold, but we still got private utilities going on in the meantime.
That's the sidewalk coming up from
Tiffany Woods up to
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then we're planning to open bids for the resurfacing contract on February 3rd. And then we had a few projects that got bumped back by DOT. The New Bethel Church Bridge construction is lagging. It's going to probably be moving into later summer. That might not even be shown on the report you got because it was something we just got information on last week. A couple other projects had some right-of-way issues that they're dealing with and got pushed back 6 months. But besides that, didn't have anything else to add.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Appreciate that. Was that it for you, Mr. Manager?
Wanted to mention a couple of other things. The MLK, Martin Luther King Committee prepared a virtual presentation this year with the help of our communications staff. I just want to thank Kyle Kettler for his excellent video work, and Rick Mercer for some of the production and logistics on that. Very, very well done. So we want to thank them for that, and it will be available on our YouTube channel, so you can still watch that. And just a reminder that we will have Groundhog Day this year. It will be February the 2nd from 10 to 12, and that will be out at White Deer Park.
Okay. And would you want to mention, I know we always recognize Black History Month, and sometimes we have done that in person. I believe that's going to be a virtual type of, or maybe it hasn't been fully determined. Do you know?
It hadn't been fully determined. There was some logistics with some of the guests that were going to be invited, so not quite sure how they plan to do that, but I'll talk about that at our work session.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Any questions for the manager? Town attorney, do you have any reports at this time?
No reports this evening. We have plenty of closed sessions.
Okay, thank you.
We have more than what we have on the agenda, correct? Okay.
We do have one there, yeah. Under council reports, recognize council just a minute. Just while it's fresh on my mind, the mayor wants to let you know that, again, with Rick and Kyle's assistance, this year's State of the Town information sharing will be done via podcast. Had a sit down with Rick, and they're working on the editing and the final polish, but hope that'll be available probably in February, maybe by the first meeting or mid-February, and we'll have that available. So just wanted you to know that. So at this time, I'll recognize council members for any reports. I'll start on this end this time with Mr. Matthews.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Singleton.
Yes, I want to let the council know, I have emailed staff, I've emailed Rodney and John and Chris, and I believe Jeff, multiple times in the past few weeks in regards to issues on Timber Drive, particularly the section between Vandover Springs Road and down toward the crosswalk from the Greenway. I appreciate their diligence in taking my long lengthy emails and answering them. I know they've been working with DOT on some issues, some speed limit issues, some crosswalk issues and so forth, and I appreciate their time. I will mention that one of the concerns I had, I heard from a resident, but then I saw it with my own eyes, was the crosswalk that was moved down into the median, much safer than the previous crosswalk that we had, and issues with the lights and the signs there, and I was wrong. I thought those lights would work fine, so I was wrong. The ones that flash should be better. And I've emailed, and I'll send you all that email that Chris sent back with the answers, but I hope we will strongly consider replacing those signs with the ones that flash. And also maybe put one in the middle, because the issue is that some people on Timber Drive, some people that are driving on Timber Drive, I saw a couple Saturdays ago, a couple trying to cross, and they got in the middle, and the lights quit after 30 seconds or flashing, and they're stuck. There's nowhere to go. Yeah. And there's not one flashing, and it is kind of a weird turn. If a little curve, you may not see it. If there's one in the middle that shows both sides, that might be helpful, and Chris has addressed that. Also, I know they're working with, I think, the state to put some new signage in that area, so maybe we can coordinate this together and we can talk about putting a different type of signal there at that crosswalk. The Phil Matthews signals that he got down there at the White Deer and Lake Benson Park.
Right.
I thought the others would be fine, and they're not. So I just admit that, and I'll send you that email of the answers that Chris sent back on that on my many questions. That was the second or third email I sent about it. So I appreciate their time in working on this.
Okay, thank you.
And no matter what the speed limit is, people are still going to speed. We all know that. Yeah. Unless we can, put the police out there 24/7, they just can't do that. Thank you.
Well, I promise not to try to pontificate here, but to your point about speeding, that's I understand your point. People have a tendency to do that, but I still can't accept it as a matter of norm. I still encourage our citizens to be aware of the sensitivity of their neighbors and whoever else is on the highway. It disturbs me greatly to see people driving, what was the term the gentleman used earlier, in a creative way, I believe he said. But I see people speeding and driving in a dangerous fashion. I challenge all of our citizens to think about your fellow citizens out there and to drive the speed limit and drive in a careful and a courteous manner. Excuse me, go ahead, Ms. Behringer.
Okay, just two things. Manager, that there's a tree down across utility lines, and I think on West Garner Road, and I told you it was in front of TT&E, but it is not. It's across the street from Pierce Brothers. Still down. I was by there today, and it's still hanging. I saw a Duke Energy truck out there, but it was further up the road and wasn't addressing that. Pretty good sized tree just laying across that line. And just a question, I heard today that the old Max TV building was painted, and they painted over baseball mural. Do we know why?
Yeah, I don't know anything about it. I saw it at lunchtime, so I don't know anything about it.
The mural was terribly faded, and we were going to have to do some renovations to the mural to have it done. We've lost contact with the artist. We didn't have a clear way of being able to get it refurbished. So given that the trade-off there is investment in the building and hopefully the opportunity to work out some new opportunity with them, and so we thought it was probably just best at this point, since we didn't have a clear path of making that more attractive, to move forward with the investment in the building and look for new opportunities down the road.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Dellinger, reports.
Just a question on where the progress with the Garner Grows stuff is. I know there was at least some drafts of agreements and also some cost estimates on getting water. I saw some emails with Public Works. If just an update at the work session might be helpful to bring that back.
Okay, yeah,
to
we can do
where
that.
where things are,
Mhm.
because I know there'll be some decision points for council, substantive conversation on what the proposal is and
Yes.
what council's vision is. So.
Yeah, we're in the process of looking at the lease, so there's going to be some questions for council to just decide on and some cost things
Okay.
to decide on also.
All right.
Yep.
Great, thank you. That's all I've got.
Mr. Vance.
Yes, do we have an update on the demolition of the homes in front of the GPAC?
Yes, we hired a contractor. They have done some asbestos department's been using them for training. But the plan is that those homes should be down in the mid-February, but should be down before the end of February. I think that we're looking at the mid-February timeframe to get those down.
Okay,
Excuse me,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
No.
While we're talking about houses and demolition, I did send an email about this, but one of the homes on the Lyles property had a large tree fall on it, and it's not really worth repairing. It was being used for storage anyway, so we are going to look at demolishing that one kind of in the same time period, or close to it anyway. So.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Vance? Okay, I believe that covers everybody. So, council, the last item is closed session. You see the one that is cited there, and then I believe I have a cite for a second one from our attorney. General Statutes 143-318, is that 1A3 to consult with attorney in regards to
11A3.
litigation?
And then we'd also like to ask for one for economic development under 143-318.11A4.
Okay. All right,
I'll make a motion to that, Mayor, for those three items, A4, A3, A4, and A5.
okay.
Second.
Properly made, motion is properly made that we go into closed session for consideration of these matters. If you favor the motion, would you vote aye?
Aye. Aye.
And there is no opposition, so I'm going to declare that we will go into closed session, and I'll let you know as soon as we're ready to begin.
Mayor, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Okay, the council is back in open session, having gone into closed session. I'm going to ask Attorney Jones, if she will, to briefly summarize the closed session that we had.
Town council gave staff direction on a number of economic development and real estate acquisition issues. Council also took official action to adopt resolution number 2020-2476, authorizing acquisition of rights-of-way and easements needed for construction of roadway improvements on New Rand Road in settlement of an eminent domain lawsuit.
Okay, I believe that settles everything. Council, if there's nothing else to come before us, I will entertain a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Okay, moved and seconded properly. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
So declared. I adjourn our meeting.